The president again detailing what he thinks is action that is needed right now, and action that he would take on his own, for example, on those bump stocks that make essentially a semi-automatic weapon act, almost like an automatic one used in the Las Vegas attack, that he would act on that alone, regardless of Congress, by way of presumably an executive order that wouldn't necessarily stick longer term, but the president making it clear time's a wasting. This has been going on for quite some time, and it's got to stop, calling on governors to come up with a plan and sort of a plan of action beyond what they want to do in each of their states and districts, but that's something that would stick this time and make our schools safer. Among his more controversial proposals has been this idea of arming teachers. The president has said that he just wants to arm those who would be predisposed to do so and would be eager to do so. What kind of a percentage that would mean, how they would be paid, how they would be trained, assuming some gun knowledge is anyone's guess. But we've been following all of that and some of the headway that has been made in that meeting, because in these divisive times, this was not a very divisive issue about protecting kids. The means to which we go about it was. But the fact of the matter is the Dow is up about 340 points here in and out of session highs. A lot of that has to do on the belief that at least in this area, they might be able to find some common ground. This is not the sole reason for this. Much better than expected news out of companies. The comeback in a lot of those so-called FANG stocks, the technology stocks that led the rally up and then got pummeled. Most of them are at or near the levels they were before the meltdown. We're going to get into all of this right now with the Independent Women's Forum Board of Directors, former Congresswoman Nan Hayworth, and the Wall Street Journal Associate Editor John Bussey. John, the president is talking in broad, schematics here, right? That he'd like to work with them, but they are divided, Democrats and Republicans, by and large, on how to go about it.
Yeah.
But where do you see this going?
Yeah, it's interesting because no matter what your politics are on President Trump, he sits in a very unusual position, which is that he has the support of the NRA, and he is now talking about this issue. In other words, he has the opportunity to bridge between Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, I liked how he said the NRA is on our side,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if that's quite the case with everyone. Right.
Depends on your view of that. Jerry Seib has a really good column on this in today's Journal, that this isn't quite a Nixon to China moment, but it kind of moves in that direction. That is, that he has this opportunity, if he wishes, to pursue an incredibly divisive issue because he has the standing in the Republican Party on this issue. And there are Democrats that are very interested in brokering some kind of change in our gun laws. Now, whether or not that happens in an election year, incredibly divisive issue. We're less than 9 months out from the midterms. Whether or not that happens in election year is a big question mark.
The only thing that surprised me, maybe he said this before, Nan, so I'm out of the loop on it, when he talked about bump stocks. I'll just do this on my own.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. Now, do you envision a situation where he's not making much progress with these, with governors, with the, in Congress, that he just acts unilaterally and they argue it out in the courts?
It'd be Republicans in the House, of course, would be the biggest block. But, he is, I agree with you, John, he's using the bully pulpit, and he is in a position to provide moral leadership on this. John Zogby has said it. And, Neil, in fact, the NRA, after the Las Vegas massacre, did endorse restrictions, legal restrictions on bump stocks. So the president's actually on pretty safe political ground.
Then how did that fall apart? It looked like there was universal support for it.
Yeah, I think, because there are so many issues involved in these god-awful, dreadful situations. And really, thinking back to our own school days, we're all about the same age. We didn't think about these hideous school shooting events. And I think primarily they have to do although access to firearms clearly is a problem, but they have to do with the larger issues of societal disintegration, children who need guidance in families that have failed, enormous burdens on our social welfare system. I mean, and mental illness.
But it's a mental illness one that sticks in a lot of people's craw, right? I mean, because they immediately start saying, all right, Mr. President, with these restrictions you would put on those who you don't think should get guns, where does it end?
Right.
They're privacy advocates and everything else who go nuts on this. So where do you see it going? I mean, this year, John, is it difficult, impossible this year?
Bump stocks is an easy issue, isn't it?
You would think.
It's an easy issue because it's an ancillary one, right? It was a factor in the Las Vegas shooting. It was not a factor in the Florida shooting.
Whatever happened to that then, John? It would look like that everyone was in agreement on that.
So maybe it gets reinvigorated, and maybe you see that be the resolution, that be the deliverable by the president. It's not going to be a major factor in gun violence in the United States.
What about the twin sacrifice he expected both parties to make without saying it?
Right.
I'm going to get the NRA on some of these issues. We also have to address violent games and programming. That would be something more.
First Amendment, Second Amendment.
Right, for Democrats, too, and their
Battle
Hollywood
of the
affinity.
amendments. Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think I think we can all agree, and I think we can get broad consensus on this beyond bump stocks, which may be slightly tricky, although I think that can be done. But fix NICS. Fix the information database, the identification database, the background check system. There's a bipartisan bill now in the Senate between Cornyn and Heitkamp, Senator Cornyn and Senator Heitkamp, that probably could pass the Senate, and I think it probably could pass the House.
Move on this to say we have to offer more than prayers and all was a significant development, wasn't it?
And the students rallying and keeping this issue kind of vibrant. Some of the boycotts against companies has also sort of drawn the corporate world into this debate.
These companies that are distancing themselves from the NRA.
From the NRA, right, that had somehow offered discounts to the NRA, like United Airlines and Delta Airlines, saying we're not going to do that anymore. But, you know, the bigger issues, there's still some fairly difficult trade-offs that are being asked for. So, yes, there's an effort to raise the age limit for when you can buy some of these weapons. But the trade-off is, hey, we want one state's permission for open carry to apply to all of the states across, which is one is going to run afoul of states' rights issues, and the other is going to run afoul of those who don't like the notion of open carry to begin with. And so this remains a loggerheads debate in an election year.
John, if I can just clarify on reciprocity, what that means is that if a given state allows open carry, they will then allow a license for open carry in another state to be honored in that state. It's not that if someone's licensed to open carry in one state, a non-open carry state.
Well, they are talking. I mean, and, you know, of course, they've talked in the past with this kind of venue we've seen repeatedly. And to John's point about the kids involved, that's a game changer. That's something that's unprecedented. So maybe something is made and progress is made here, but it's way too soon to tell.